All right, we're diving into one of history's most chilling and honestly, just plain weird unsolved cases. We're going back to 1922 to this isolated farmstead in Germany that became the scene of a crime that still makes no sense. This is more than just a murder mystery. It's like a ghost story, except the person haunting the house was very, very real. And that right there, that is the single detail that makes this case so deeply unsettling. Before we even get into the who, what, or why, just let that sink in for a second. The person who did this didn't run. They stayed. They literally made themselves at home. You know, to really wrap your head around the sheer strangeness of Hinterkaifeck, we have to start at the end, with what the killer did after the entire family was already gone. Yeah, this was no quick getaway. For days after the family was dead, someone was just calmly taking care of the farm. Police discovered that they'd been feeding the cattle. They'd been eating meals cooked in the kitchen, and they'd even been sleeping in one of the beds, all while the bodies of the victims were lying just yards away in the barn and in the house. So the big question is, how on earth did it get to this point? To figure that out, we have to rewind a few days, back to when the family was still alive, and becoming terrifyingly aware that they were not alone. In the days right before the murders, this thick cloud of paranoia just settled over the farm. A whole series of strange, unexplainable things started happening, and they all pointed to one horrifying conclusion. Someone was on their property, watching them, and maybe, just maybe, already living with them. The feeling of dread just kept building. First, they find a single set of footprints in the fresh snow, leading out of the woods right up to the house, but no tracks leading away. Then, the house keys just vanish into thin air. And finally, the most terrifying sign of all, the sound of footsteps creaking around in the attic at night. So you see, the family wasn't just worried about some threat outside trying to get in. They were faced with this dawning, horrifying realization that the danger was already inside the house with them. The intruder hadn't just arrived, it seems like they had already moved in. And then it happened. On the night of March 31st, 1922, all those strange occurrences came to a head in a brutal, methodical attack. This wasn't some chaotic crime of passion. It was a chillingly calculated plan to wipe out the family one by one. Even the weapon itself tells a story. It wasn't some gun brought from far away. No, it was a common farm tool, a mattock, which is basically a type of pickaxe. That suggests a certain familiarity with the farm, you know? And it just grounds the whole crime in this awful rustic brutality. The killer's approach was just terrifyingly systematic. The theory is they used noises from the barn to lure family members out, one after another, to be killed. Only after the adults in the barn were dealt with did the killer go back into the house to murder the new maid and the family's 2-year-old son. So in the aftermath, as all these horrifying details started to come out, a massive investigation kicked off. But instead of giving anyone answers, it just seemed to add more and more layers of mystery to a crime that was already impossible to understand. I mean, they questioned over 100 suspects through the years. They looked at every single possibility. Was it a neighbor holding a grudge? A robbery gone wrong, even though cash was left untouched? A crime of passion? Maybe some drifter passing through? But every single theory they had just fell apart. And this number, this is the unbelievable result of all of it. For the murder of 6 people, Andreas Gruber, his wife Cecilia, their daughter Victoria, her 2 small children, and the brand new maid Maria, 0 people were ever brought to justice. Not one. So a century later, the files are technically still open, but the case is as cold as it gets. It feels like the secrets of what really happened that night at Hinterkaifeck were just buried with the victims, leaving nothing behind but questions and this really deep, unsettling silence. Which brings us right back to where we started. We can argue about motives and suspects all day long, but the one detail that truly haunts this case, the question that just breaks all logic, is still hanging there. Who was the phantom tenant of Hinterkaifeck? Who could commit such an awful slaughter and then just calmly stay behind to feed the cat?